Welcome to Surrender School.
All right. Welcome to the second week of Supercharge 3.0. It is called Living Free. We're changing the name to Getting Freer. And this butterfly image, and one of the things that I realized is that when I first started working on this, I'm like, okay, it's living free. And one of the things as I began actually doing the work is I realized that there is no way to live free every minute. At least as an addict, I can't live free every minute, but I am getting freer all the time. And if I can celebrate the fact that I'm getting freer, then I can relax and just accept that that's the way life works, right? Rather than this, picture that I'm going to arrive someday and that's never going to happen. So anyway, even though right now it's called living free, it is actually called getting freer. So, and starting next week, we actually name it that way. The mission statement of Surrender School is at Surrender School, we recover. Our mission is to share 12-step and other supportive recovery solutions with those who want a healthy relationship with food. We are not an official 12-step meeting, but we do try to adhere to the spirit of the traditions. The vast majority of us are 12-steppers and love the big book. So we do try to adhere to the spirit of the traditions as we go through our day. All right. Let's take a moment to feel your breath going in and out, feel your feet on the floor, and be as present as you can possibly be. And let's go ahead and say the Surrender School's version of the set-aside prayer. God, help me to set aside everything I think I know to leave space for what I have yet to learn. So the vast majority of what we're doing throughout these, it's going to end up being 27 weeks long, is we are focused on the two pieces of freedom. One is freedom from, and it's from the things of our past. In my case, I used to get in people's face all the time. I don't do that anymore, mostly. I still have the skill, but I don't do that. So I'm free from the need to get in somebody's face if they irritate me. Right? There's a beautiful freedom from. But when I get the freedom from, it gives me a freedom to, and those are separate things. So now I'm free to build relationships, build better relationships than I used to have. So those, even though those seem like blended together, they're actually separate things. So I have freedom from things, and I have freedom to aspire to better things. And so what we will do in the breakout room, we cover the freedom from. In the home room, which is what I'm calling the big room that we're all in together, we'll talk about the freedom to, which is the aspirational piece of this. I don't expect that this will be very, very specifically one or the other. I don't think we're even capable of doing that. So everybody relax about that. But that's kind of the idea of what we're doing here. So if we were sharing, which we're not going to do today, this would be the step one's freedom from the homework over the weekend, over this past week, which was to read 1.0, Supercharge 1.0, and then talk about the freedom from. But we're going to skip that. All right. What I'm going to cover now is basically freedom from. Everything I'm covering is out on the website. So for your type, you will find exactly these words for your type. What you probably won't do is go look at all the types. So what I'm going to do here is just cover everything for each of the types, the freedom from, and then we'll cover the freedom to as well. So this is type 1. This is step 1 of getting freer. Freedom from the exhausting job of grading every bite as right or wrong. Using food as punishment for falling short of your own standards. The belief that enough willpower will finally make you good enough. Freedom from the secret rebellion against your own rigid rules, followed by shame. And freedom from carrying the whole burden of fixing yourself alone. So these are the things that as you work this program, you get the type 1s will get freedom from these things. For type 2, freedom from the exhausting performance of always being fine so others don't worry. Freedom from using food as the only need you're allowed to meet in secret. Freedom from measuring your worth by how depleted you're willing to become. Freedom from scanning a room for who needs you before asking what you need. And freedom from believing your own hunger and exhaustion don't count as real problems. The other thing I want to say is each of the steps, this is the belief of this, each of the steps has its own freedom that sets us up for future steps. And that's why if we can recognize the freedom that we get from step one, that means as we hit the other steps, there's additional freedoms that we get as a result of that. If you remember the promises of step 9, right? If we are painstaking at this phase of our development, right? If as we hit step 9, it's almost like the culmination of all of those. And step 10, we stop fighting everything. It's like that's how we get to those, is because we're absorbing freedoms as we go along, is basically the perspective, which is why we do freedom from, freedom to. All right. For the type 3, step 1 of this is freedom, means freedom from the job of making even collapse look impressive. Freedom from using food as fuel for the next win or a reward for surviving the last win. And freedom from treating tiredness as a scheduling problem instead of the truth. And freedom from believing a bad day has to be spun before it can be shared. And freedom from measuring today's worth against yesterday's resume. For type 4, all right, step 1 gives them freedom from turning every craving into a chapter of a bigger emotional story. Freedom from believing intense feelings entitle you to intense eating. Freedom from using food to prove how deeply or uniquely you suffer. Freedom from narrating your pain instead of simply feeling it. And freedom from shame dressed up as specialness. No one struggles quite like I do. Step 1's freedom for type 5, freedom from the exhausting job of monitoring every interaction for how much it will cost you. Freedom from believing solitude is the only safe address for your feelings. Freedom from using food as a stand-in for the connection you've been rationing. Freedom from the private conviction that unmanageability only counts if you can prove it. And freedom from treating your own hunger and need as data to manage rather than truth to feel. So that's what the 5 gets in step 1. What the 6 gets in step 1 is freedom from the exhausting job of pre-living every worst-case scenario before it happens. Freedom from believing one more snack, one more plan, one more scan of the room will finally make you feel safe. Freedom from the shame of treating your fear as a character flaw instead of a wound. Freedom from the isolating job of standing guard over your own life alone. And freedom from using food as an emergency brake for anxiety it was never built to hold. And remember, step 1 basically says that we admit our powerlessness, acknowledge our powerlessness over, and in my case, I just say over reality. I have no power over reality. And if I can get these freedoms, or even some of these freedoms, then that once again allows, what I keep finding is every time I work the next step, because I've identified and really looked at those freedoms, then the next step shows up even more real than it did in the past. I'm finding this 3.0, the Supercharge 3. Maybe it's because I'm actually working at the other ones. I kind of didn't. Okay, I'm confessing I didn't, but I really am working this one, so it's very helpful. All right, for the 7, step 1, what type 7s get from the step 1 are freedom from believing the next bite, plan, or idea will finally quiet the restlessness. Freedom from using food to outrun boredom, disappointment, or an ordinary Tuesday. Freedom from the nonstop job of keeping every good option in reach at once. And freedom from confusing a full schedule with being emotionally okay. And freedom from the quiet fear that if the stimulation stops, something painful will catch up. For type 8, freedom from the exhausting effort of trying to outmuscle food through sheer will. Freedom from the myth that admitting defeat is the same as being weak. Freedom from using food as one more thing to conquer, manage, or control. Freedom from insisting unmanageability is a personal failure you should fix alone. And freedom from the exhausting show of being unbreakable, even as it costs you everything. And for the type 9, Step 1 gives them freedom from the fog of using food to mute conflict, feelings, or unmet needs. Freedom from the illusion that disengaging equals peace. Freedom from believing that gritting through it or waiting it out will eventually fix the eating. Freedom from the reflex to shrink a real crisis into it's not that bad. And freedom from autopilot living that passes for calm. All right, once again, finish the breakout room. And now what I'm going to do is introduce the freedom 2, and then we will share on the freedom 2 for step 1. So type 1, step 1 gives them the freedom to rest from constant self-monitoring around food or whatever is your deal. The freedom to have honesty about limits without it meaning failure. Freedom to the first flicker of compassion for how hard you've been trying. So the freedom to give yourself the first flicker of compassion for how hard you've been trying. And the freedom to have solidarity with others who understand the impossible standard that you've held. And freedom to give yourself permission to simply not know the answer yet. What's really interesting, I have worked with ones before, and sometimes you'll say, you're being so hard on yourself. No, I'm not. I'm realistic, or they use some word like that. So it's like this one should just say, give yourself a break. You're human, right? I think in Supercharge 1.0, that was the thing. We would say we're human. We're human. This is the story of a human being, right? That's our story. All right. For type 2, step 1 gives you freedom to name your own needs out loud without apology or a favor attached to it. The freedom to let food be nourishment instead of a hidden reward for over-functioning. The freedom to notice depletion as information, not a badge of devotion. The freedom to ask for help when you're running on empty. And the freedom to belong to a recovery community that cares for you, not just through you. For the type 3, step 1 gives freedom to say, I'm not okay, without a follow-up plan. Freedom to let hunger and fullness be simple physical facts, not scorecards. Freedom to feel depleted without treating it as a personal failure. Freedom to ask for help before you've earned the right to need help. And freedom to rest as a beginning, not as a confession. Once again, 3s are very, very driven, can be. All right, for the type 4, step 1 gives them freedom to call a compulsion without embellishment. Freedom to feel powerless without turning it into a tragedy or poetry. The freedom to ask for help in plain, unremarkable words. The freedom to notice hunger and emotion as 2 different things. And the freedom to begin recovery on solid, unglamorous grounds. All right, for the type 5, step 1 gives them freedom to notice food and withdrawal as related symptoms of one deeper avoidance. Freedom to let one honest sentence about your life stand without a caveat. Freedom to feel the relief of being seen needing something without immediately correcting it. Freedom to consider that connection might cost less than you've calculated. And the freedom to begin recovery as a shared project instead of a private research program. So those are the freedoms the freedom to do, right, that the type 5 gets. For the type 6, freedom to exhale, if only for a moment, instead of bracing. Freedom to tell the truth about how tired the vigilance has made you. Freedom to let a first crack of relief in without needing full certainty. Freedom to be met by others who know exactly what constant scanning feels like. And freedom to begin trusting that unmanageability is evidence you're ready, not evidence you're broken. I love this one. I love the 6. I think this is beautiful. This is the one more than any other that I look at and say, if a 6 can get this, it really does open the other steps, right? It really just makes the other steps flower. All right. For the type 7, freedom to notice restlessness and let it be simply be there, unfed. Freedom to tell someone the truth about how tired the chasing has become. Freedom to ask for help instead of inventing another workaround. Freedom to let an ordinary, uneventful moment count as a good one. and freedom to trust that stillness will not swallow them whole. All right, for the type 8, freedom to tell the plain truth about what isn't working without spin or self-defense. Freedom to feel the relief of finally putting down a fight you were always going to lose. Freedom to let unmanageability be information instead of an indictment. Freedom to take the first honest breath before any help has even arrived. And freedom to begin recovery from truth instead of performance. Yeah, those all ring with me as an 8. Okay, and for the type 9, step 1 gives them freedom to feel the weight of what's actually been happening, freedom to name food's role honestly without minimizing, freedom to notice the difference between numbness and rest, freedom to take the first real breath in a long time, and freedom to stand at the start of something instead of drifting past it. All right, so now we are in the part that is homeroom sharing. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this too. Freedom is built one ordinary day at a time. A lot of us do. Our types try to make the days extraordinary. And it's almost like relaxing into them is what makes the days extraordinary. All right. The homework for this week is basically, this is the week 2 homework, is reading and journaling on getting freer for step 1. So we did the first part of step 1, and now the homework is to basically read and journal getting freer, which is all the way at the bottom. When you find you go into your type, then you go into the step, in this particular step 1, and then you read that last week. That's what you did. And then below that is the 3.0 stuff, which is called getting freer. And you go ahead and read that and journal on that. That is your homework for this week.
Thanks for recovering with us. Thanks for recovering with us.